Well, hello, everyone out there. Welcome to Keeping You Wise by Keeping It Real, where we bring authentic and real conversations to fuel the soul that you can share with others. Welcome to our 12th episode, where we will discuss mindful musings, exploring self-awareness. My name is Paula Bell, and typically I am joined by my co-host solo, Chris Solomon. But unfortunately, Solo will not be joining us today because he had a death in his family. So we do ask that you please do keep him in your thoughts and in your prayers during this time. But before we jump into the episode, I have a couple of disclaimers. I am not a therapist, and I will not offer any medical advice. I am not trained, qualified, or able to diagnose or treat any form of mental illness or disorder. And some topics may be triggering, so make sure you are prepared for that. The purpose of this video podcast is to have real and authentic conversation that provides wisdom to us all. So please interact with us via the chat. We would love to hear your comments. And right now you can start by telling us where you are tuning in from. And if you have any questions during the conversation, please post them in the chat as we may be able to answer them live. Now, the episodes will be about 45 minutes long, max 60 minutes. These are real laid-back segments where we just have open, honest, authentic, and real conversations. These segments will be aired monthly, and we will have guest speakers that will speak on a wide array of topics. Make sure to subscribe to our channels so you get notifications when we go live. My channel is the Life Coach Sensei. We also have the Keeping You Wise by Keeping It Real video YouTube channel as well. So now let's go ahead and jump right in. Today, I have joining with me one guest so far. Hopefully the other one is able to join here in a little bit, having some technical difficulties, but we're going to work through that. But my first guest is Abena Imhotep. Abena is an author, educator, consultant, and speaker. She provides transformative guidance to a wide range of public and private institutions, businesses, communities, and next generation leaders. Also joining, if he's able to get that connection to work, so we have Jack Chimbititi. Jack is a highly energetic and determined business person. He loves making lasting and meaningful business relationships. He has produced over 8 television programs, y'all. He also has produced a number of commercials for high-ranking companies, as well as documentaries for international firms. Please join me in welcoming Abena and Jack.
Hi, Paula. Thank you for having me.
Hello. All right. So it looks like our friend Jack is still trying to connect. So hopefully he'll connect with us here soon. But thank you so much for being with me, Abena. It's so great to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing good. Today is a good day. Every day is a good day. So there's no other place I'd rather spend my evening than talking to you.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So I want to first just kind of, how can I do this? Set the stage for what occurred for us to get to this point. So Jack, Abena, and I had attended a workshop that was hosted by Cultural. Now, if you don't know anything about Cultural, I highly recommend you go out to Cultural, www.cultural.org. I will be doing a little bit of explanation later on in the show, but definitely check out this organization. They are doing amazing things in the state of Iowa as far as bridging and building communities that embrace and appreciate different cultures and the different levels of dimensions of diversity that we bring. But we had the opportunity to attend a workshop that they were hosting around essential practices for inclusive cultures. And during this workshop, there was one activity. We did many activities, but there was one activity that really, really resonated with us. Oh, looks like we got Jack. Hold on. It looks like Jack made it. Jack made it, y'all.
I made it.
Welcome, Jack. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
we're all here. All right, let me get my train of thought back. Okay, so we attended this workshop, and one of the activities was there were cards that were laid out on the table, and we had to choose a card that we most resonated with at that point in time. And all 3 of us chose self-awareness. And we were the only 3 Black or brown people in that room And all of us went to self-awareness. So we started to have a deeper conversation about that after the workshop on why do we think that all three of us went to self-awareness? Are we really being self-aware for ourselves? Are we being self-aware for survival? So that's how this whole episode came together. So I want to kick it off first by just asking both of you, why do you feel that the three of us immediately went, even though I know some of us thought there were a couple of cards that I could have picked, but we immediately essentially chose, right, the self-awareness card. Why do you think we did that? And what is your definition of self-awareness? Let's start there.
I would say it comes as if it comes naturally for us, people of color. We have to be aware of our environment. We have to be aware of where we are, who we are, and what we're doing, what we're saying. We've almost been conditioned to think in a certain way, So I would think that we probably all didn't think about it until we found ourselves in that zone that, what is going on, right? And we wanted to then start establishing that, is this something that happens to every, person of color? Is this something that just happened by coincidence? And I don't think at that particular time, and until, you said it, Paula, that I think there's a reason that, we're all here. Let's try and figure it out. I think we probably hadn't even thought about some of the things that we have to go through, some of the things that in a country like, the United States, you have to condition yourself in a certain way. So, at the spur of the moment, I didn't really think about it. I actually thought that, being self-aware is being very sure of yourself, is being somebody who knows what you're trying to get. If you're in a particular place, if you're in a particular space, and you are really conscious of your actions. But at this point, Abina, maybe you can come in. I'm not really sure if that's it or it's a part of survival.
Thank you, Jack. I think all of that is true. All of that is right. For me, I remember when that exercise was introduced to us, those different words on the cards were framed as values. And so the ask for the participants was to choose the value that most resonates with you. And so it did kind of hit me. It hit different when the three of us chose self-awareness as a value. So something that directs our lives. And so, yeah, as Paula said, I did want to kind of know what we all were thinking. Were we on the same page? Why did we gravitate towards self-awareness as our predominant value in that moment? And I think as far as defining self-awareness, it goes back to something Jack says, consciousness and proximity, really. Awareness is about understanding your proximity to something else. And in that case, is our proximity to culture, our own, and the cultures that we're surrounded by. And so, yeah, that being a value, it took me aback.
I would definitely have to agree with both of you. It didn't hit me until we were sitting in the group and I just happened to be looking around the room. And that's when I saw that, wait a minute, the people who look like me all sitting together, what's really going on? I mean, was this planned? I mean, what did this work out to be? It really made me think, though, like, am I doing self-awareness? Because I do a lot of it. I do a lot of self-introspection, self-reflection. Am I really doing it for myself? Or am I doing it so I can navigate life? And that just kept coming to me as we were having the conversation. And so maybe let's go a little bit deeper. Can either of you or both of you share your insights on how cultural background and societal experiences may influence the practice of self-awareness among people of color?
Well, absolutely, Paula. I think being self-aware is a survival tactic, and it's a way for us to move through the world. It connects us to our historical context in the United States. Now, whether that's a Black person born in the United States or a Black person who immigrates to the United States, there's a certain um, there's a certain lane in which we fit in this country, and understanding that influences not only our sense of self-awareness but the perceptions of other people. And I remember that day walking into that room. I was a few minutes late, so everyone was already there, already seated, and immediately I became self-aware. Okay, I don't know who's going to be in the room. I hope to see familiar faces. Paula, I saw your face. I said, okay, I know someone. And immediately I was self-aware. But then after that initial layer of self-awareness, I went a little deeper into it with okay, am I safe here? Can I actually take away the learning objectives because I don't feel any threats to my identity? And so that's always another layer of self-awareness that, whether or not we have time to go into it on a personal level is one thing, but we often as Black folks don't get a chance to explore that layer in a true introspective way and then come back and talk about it. So I appreciate this conversation because you're going to help me unpack all this.
And you're talking about, being Black people in the U.S., but let's talk about being a Black person in Iowa, which
Yeah.
is another version of the U.S. And I've been to, networking events. I was at a networking event just this weekend, right? And I've been to events where you're either the only Black person in the room, or if you have a couple of other people, you're very few. So, like you're saying, the first thing is you subconsciously ask yourself this question. You probably don't even say it out in your mind, but it's a subconscious question. Am I safe? Right? And then it's simple things like, where am I going to sit? Right? You're trying to choose a table. Where are the most welcoming people? Right? Where are the most friendly faces? Are they actually friendly for being friendly? Or, you know what I mean? Where can I connect? And then when it comes to actually talking to people, you're actually trying to be very self-aware about what am I going to say, right? So there's so many things that are happening in your mind as you're processing, whereas somebody else just comes in there, they're very free, they're doing what they're doing. But because of, like you said, our background and where we come from and all these other things that we carry, you have to process lots of things before you get into a room, just for you to sit down and say, hey, I'm now comfortable to be, part of this conversation. And then sometimes when you lift your hand and you're not picked, you ask yourself the question, is that I wasn't picked because they didn't see me, or because it wasn't my time, or was it because I'm Black, right? So you continue asking yourself these questions because they picked the person next to you, or they picked a couple of other people, and, they're taking all these opinions. So there's so many rooms and so many spaces where you have to be self-aware, because that gets you to say, how can I achieve, if not the same results, or better than everybody else, if I'm not on the same, playing field? So you're asking yourself, am I on the same level playing field with everybody else? Are we all, having the same conversation here? Are my, recommendations or my points or my suggestions being heard? These questions are running through your mind. So the self-awareness piece is very critical. It's now an issue of what to do with it. I think that's where we need to say, what do we do with it?
So that's really deep. Listen to how much work we have to do just to get comfortable. Listen to all of that. So you walk into the room. Okay, is there anybody here that I know that I can connect with who will
Mhm.
understand me on the level I need to be understood? Okay, so now I got there. All right, so now I'm trying to engage. All right. Am I not being picked because of the color of my skin? Or
Mhm.
is it just not my time? Is there something deeper going on here? How on earth do we function to get anything done with all of these things we have going in the back of our head, right? That's a lot of energy
Yeah.
that's being dispensed just to engage, participate in an event or in something. And a lot of that comes from the experiences that we've probably had over and over and over again, which takes me to my next question. In what ways do you believe historical and systemic factors contribute to our heightened emphasis on self-awareness within communities of color?
Well, I think our historical context contributes to our self-awareness and the ability to negotiate these spaces tremendously. I mean, I think back to, I mean, this is Black History Month, so we're immersed in this knowledge and this history right now. I think back to enslavement. I think back to segregation and stories that I've heard my relatives tell about their coming of age in a time where they had limited and restricted mobility because of systemic racism and individual racism. So all of that is in our psyche and it's passed down from generation to generation. Be careful what you look like, fix your face. When you go to these spaces and these places, make sure you're sitting up straight, make sure you're presented, you present well. All of these things, they impact our self-awareness. So it becomes a part of our DNA to be aware. The work that you said we have to do, it's a heck of a lot of work. And not only do we have to negotiate these things, but our children, our young people have to negotiate these things. And they may or may not have the skills and tools to be able to do that. So I think it matters, our historical context. And once we have a fuller understanding of that, it makes it easier to understand why we have to negotiate, and not just negotiate, but push back against some of this. I'm here and I shouldn't have to slide over. I shouldn't have to fix my face. I should really just be myself and let the chips fall where they may. And I think as we get to that place as a community of people, we'll be better off for it.
And a question that even pops up, where as you say that, Abina, is, do I even know myself? Because it's one thing to be yourself when you truly know yourself. And then it's another thing to try and be yourself, but you don't even know who you really are. Like, because you're talking about history, right? You're talking about the systematic environment where we've always been told who we have to be. You have always been told how to conform to an environment. This is how you should talk. This is how you should walk. This is how you should behave. So have you ever created enough time and room and space to actually discover yourself, to say, at my fullest potential, this is how.
So why he got to be breaking up when he bringing the knowledge, though? I'm not understanding. It was getting good. It was getting good. It looks like Jack
I want
froze
his
a little
connection
bit.
back.
Right. It was getting good, but he brings up a good point, and you bring up a good point too. We have been conditioned quite a bit on how we're supposed to behave and how we're supposed to act and how we're supposed to navigate and how we're supposed to flow. And some of it might be good, but some of it also may not be, right? Because you should be able to be yourself. And I do think that in some cases it can lead to an identity crisis, to where you don't even know who you are till maybe later on in life. And that could be detrimental, because you can find out that you're actually living a life that was not really yours. It was more of, I'm living for somebody else. And that's problematic. And that's not good. But we have been conditioned that we should only move a certain way, interact a certain way. And you know what I find even more interesting is, Jack, you're not even from the United States originally. And you were still conditioned in some way on how you're supposed to behave and how you're supposed to navigate life. And that's interesting to me in that, because you were around people. Probably if you compare it to where we are in Iowa, you were around people that looked more like you largely than we are here in Iowa. But it's interesting that even in that situation, this is coming back from generations to generations to generations of advice and wisdom being passed down based on experiences that our grandparents, great grandparents, and others have had. That at some point, when do we break the generational thinking of that way versus what do we keep? Because I do think there's value in keeping some of it, because we do have systemic things that we're going through. There is still, people may not agree with me, and that's okay. I didn't say that this podcast was a podcast where we all agreed, but we will respect each other's opinions. But there is still systemic oppression that is happening for segments of populations. Now, you may be lucky enough not to experience it, but there are some of us who do. And that is something that we have to consistently and consciously think about. And when we walk into these rooms, the amount of stuff that we have to think before we could even settle in is just insane to me. Just listening to you too, and just listening to everything you do. And I do the same thing on everything we got to do just to sit down. We haven't even started talking yet. We just need to sit down. Is amazing in itself. And Jack, you got cut off, but you were giving some good pearls there that we were
Yeah,
feeling, and then you
the
got
the
cut off. So I want you to
the
finish your thought.
the internet is part of the forces that are playing against me, but I'm gonna win this battle.
I love it.
And
I love it.
it decides to do this on the day of the podcast. Imagine. But yeah, I mean, it's really it's a process that we need to start unlearning, right? We need to unlearn the things that have conditioned us to be limited. I would say the system was designed in such a way that limits people of color. And you're talking about me coming from another country. Even though I'm coming from Zimbabwe in Africa, right, where I have a lot of people look like me, there was still the colonial aspect that just applies the same effects to what people here go through who look like me, right? They still conditioned us. They still gave us an education system that only benefited them, that never benefited us. It didn't empower us to think like business people. Right now, we're trying to do business, but we're having to teach ourselves business. The books that they offer you for business studies are for you to work for somebody else, right? They don't tell you entrepreneurship with some.
Jack makes a good point there about the entrepreneurship, though. That part hit. That hit different, because you don't get
Yeah.
really taught that. You don't. You don't get taught that you can actually go out there and be your own CEO. When I was growing up, it wasn't about that. It was about going to college, getting an education, and then going into the workforce and working for someone else. There wasn't a lot of emphasis on, you know what, you can be your own boss. So he makes a very valid point there on even the education system and how we are taught. It was for working for somebody else, not necessarily working for yourself. There's a lot more of that now, where there's a lot more of attention given to and the importance of entrepreneurship and the ability to do it. But when I was coming up, that wasn't there. It wasn't as prevalent as
Indeed.
today.
Indeed. I think, Jack makes so many good points. If we recover our historical cultural memory, we would find that there is a way that, and John Henrik Clarke said it best, if we begin our history at enslavement, then everything after that seems like progress. So there is so much more for us to know about ourselves, and as Jack said, unlearn and recover this cultural memory that would aid into really understanding who we are as a group of people, not just in our own lives, in our own selves, but our connectedness to one another. I went through a personal metamorphosis about 5 years ago in search of ancestry and my familial context, and in so doing, I learned the countries that my family came from in West Africa. And I decided at that point to change my name to more accurately reflect that. And so what that did for me was connected me to my family across the water. And it also placed the demand on me that I live up to the name that I chose. So I think in whether people change their names or not, we have a responsibility to understand who we are to ourselves, to the world, and to each other, most importantly.
You touch on a very interesting point there, and I just hope that it doesn't do this to me again when I speak. Identity is critical, right? A lot of people, just to be able to succeed, you need to know who you are and where you come from, right? Because sometimes when you don't have a connection with who you are and where you come from, it's going to be a struggle to find your path. But when you start discovering who you are, when you start, connecting with your root, when you start, I love it when Paula told me how she went to Africa. She was in South Africa and she felt so connected. She was like, and I've never seen her being so passionate about it. She was like, I really felt the connection. I was like, okay, Paula, I see it.
I
I see
did.
it.
I felt like I was home.
You know what I mean? And I would also say when I went to Jamaica, I also felt the connection. I felt that these are people who are just like me, who feel like we have a connection. And they are all out there in the Caribbean, but there's still a connection with us because we're the same people. No matter where we are in the world, we could have been displaced by so many reasons. We are the same people. And the moment we start making that connection, that organic connection, and we start identifying who we are and what we're about, it goes back to the root of our conversation. We become more self-aware, but not so that we're prejudiced or not that so that we feel limited, but we are now self-aware so that we can thrive out of our excellence, because there's a lot of things that are carved out of our excellence because we're always being oppressed and limited so that we don't discover these things. So knowing our identity creates a different conversation because you have this confidence, you have this knowledge of power, you've got this presence, you've got some things that just pop up. And when you go there and you introduce yourself to people, they'll be like, this is somebody who knows what they're talking about, just even before you talk about the subject matter. So I just thought, hey, this is an important thing for us to keep doing as we become more and more self-aware about our lives.
That
And
is
in
so
this
true.
unlearning process, that the self becomes less individual and more collective. That
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness piece, not that you as an individual shrink or disappear, but you understand that the self is so much bigger than one. The self
Mm-hmm.
becomes the collective, the group of people, the community, the Africans wherever we are sprinkled about in the world. That is the self.
That is a very great point, because if you think about that, so it's interesting to me. I've had, there are individuals who have different beliefs on where people of color have come from. Okay. Some people don't ascribe that it originated in Africa, what have you. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I'm not here to debate that or to discuss that. But what got me one day was when somebody tried to tell me where I was from. And so I have a problem with that because, number one, my family's from Barbados, and the inhabitants of Barbados were Portuguese who founded the island, the British who came in, right? And we also had immigration from West Africa. So you can't tell me how I'm connected. You can't tell me I don't have some sort of connection. I'm quite sure I'm connected to all three of those countries somehow, right? Because you can't tell me that there's all these people were immigrating and something didn't, I mean, they had to co-create, something had to happen, right?
Yeah.
So would it surprise me if I had a little bit of every of that in my background, right? But it was interesting how somebody could just look at you and say, that's not where you're from. Now, who are you to tell me where I'm from? When I've done my own research, I've talked to my grandparents, I've talked to people in my family. And for you to tell somebody what their identity is wrong, I would more so ask you, do you even know what your identity is?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're so concerned about mine. Do you know yours? Right? Identity is really, really huge. And I agree with you, Abena, around the community aspect of it, because I don't care where I am. If I get around other Caribbean people, I'm at home. The minute they know you from an island, all you got to tell them is you're from an island. You're part of the family. That's it. right? When you go to Africa, I think they just accept everybody, because I didn't see them not accept whoever came in when we traveled in, right? It was just that warm, and it's an authentic,
Yep.
genuine
Mhm.
welcome where you can feel the community, you feel a part of that. And once you felt that, you can tell when it's not authentic and when it's not real, because you've
Yep.
experienced that. So we have a feeling, we know that when we go into a room, if we are actually really authentically accepted, or if we're just being tolerated because we have to be there
Mhm.
because of our position, right? But if you know who you are and you know your identity, that's not even going to phase me,
Yeah.
because I have the confidence on knowing who I am. And that was some of the things that I wanted to bring up with my kids. Be confident in who you are. Get to know who you are. Do self-reflection. Yeah, I have ideals for what I would love for you to do, how I would love for you to move. But at the end of the day, you have to live your life. You have to feel comfortable in your own skin, and you have to navigate that. And it's not always going to be easy, because we do have these biases and things out there. Let's just keep it real. They're biases, and people have thoughts and mentalities that aren't going to change. But our self-awareness is for us. And that workshop made me really think about really being intentional on making sure that any self-awareness I do is really for me, not for anybody else, not just so that I can survive, but it's really for me to actually be able to thrive and to be a part of that community and help that community. But here's something else I want to ask. What do you all think is the connection between self-awareness and emotional intelligence?
Jack, I'm going to let you answer that one first.
You just decided to put me on the spot there. But before I even answer that, I want to piggyback on some of the things that you were saying, Paula.
Yeah.
Part of it is also just the fact that, some people don't believe that their identity is strong enough or big enough to create the character that has the confidence you need. So I was talking to some people in my community, and I was telling them sometimes you need to realize how just being from a different place or being a different person creates character. So when you tell people that, I'm all the way from Zimbabwe, there's a lot of questions that are going to pop up. People are curious. Some people shy from the fact that they're from Barbados, or they shy from the fact that there's something unique about them because they feel, oh, it's embarrassing, or I'm already black, and then if I'm not from here, and then if I'm from somewhere else, and then they limit the things that actually build the character. So just knowing where you're from and knowing who you're about, or what your family is about, or what the history is about, whether good or bad, it creates character, right? So that creates a framework for identity that makes you stronger, even when you're getting that room and you feel, oh, this is meant to be an intimidating space, but because you really know yourself that much and you know your worth and your value, they will listen, whether they want to or not. They will give you the respect you need. They will, they'll become a part of your conversation instead of you becoming a part of theirs. You know what I mean? So that then creates a very strong, connection in terms of how emotionally intelligent do you want to be. Sometimes you don't even need to make too much of an effort, right? You don't even need to make too much of an effort, because some of these engagements take too much energy. Trust me, you get in there, starting a process, you started, and then for you to even start making connections with people, it's just too much work. So sometimes you have to psych yourself up. Oh, I'm going to one of those meetings again where I'm going to need to talk to people, and it's like, oh my goodness. And then, after 2 hours, your mind is fried. You're like, I can't have any more conversation. That takes too much work. You don't want to do that. So the safest place is to be rooted in your cause, rooted in your purpose, rooted in yourself. And then you don't have to try a lot. You just play your cards the way you are. Play, like what Abina was saying. Just be the person that you are without making too much an effort for anybody. That way, people will get fond of you. People will want to know more. People want to get, more involved in your space, and you're the one who's dictating the pace. Because I promise you, because you're in a different place like we are, sometimes we end up working too hard, but we don't have to do that. It's not our part to do that. Our forefathers have already worked too hard. They tilled the land. They got in there. They worked the hard jobs, and then we come in here and we try to work too hard.
Jack gonna get upset. He gonna take that whole internet and just throw it out the window after this podcast. Mm-hmm.
He is, but I so agree with him. Not being willing to um, acclimate to what others' expectations are. It takes such pressure off. And that day in the workshop that we all attended, I ended up having a really fantastic experience in that workshop, taking a
Mm-hmm.
lot of information away. And it just reiterated to me in within myself um, that I am whole and complete and lack nothing. Those
Nice.
meetings are meant to bring us together, to learn and to grow and make these connections and figure out if we can be better in certain instances when it comes to things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. But when you realize that, as Jack said, you being your authentic self adds character, um, and you can walk in with the sense of belonging that you need. You carry that with you, a sense of pride and belonging and self. That's something that we can grow to embody and carry that with us everywhere we go. It's not something that we need validation from anyone for. We don't need anybody's validation. We don't need anyone to anoint us. We are who we are. We belong in whatever space we're in. We can carry that pride of knowing who we are once we know who we are. We can carry that with us everywhere we go.
I 100% agree. And Jack, we said you're probably gonna throw that whole internet system outside after this podcast is over,
I'm telling
as
you.
because you were speaking knowledge there, as usual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just when it was getting good, you just froze there
Yeah.
on us. You just froze there on us. I actually don't
Really
remember
like it.
exactly where you stopped um
Yeah,
when you started
I
to
think
talk.
I think I think I was just wrapping up on like what Abina was saying in terms of just the formation of character and what builds the
Hmm.
strength to allow you to activate the muscle in your mind where you're not totally always working too hard. When it becomes a muscle, it's you've been exercising so much that you're now fit. You're mentally strong. So you want to be able to say you've been exercising your mind so much with the right type of thoughts, knowing who you are, knowing where you come from, knowing what activates you, what makes you strong, knowing what makes you elevate, what makes you stand out, right? So you know these things, you're so fit that whenever you get into a race or into a whatever type of competition, you're just gonna get in there without working too hard. So if we could, the same way we work on our bodies, the same way we work on our physical, if we could work on our mindset as Black people to get to a point where we're so strong, we're not going to struggle. So even when you get into an interview, or even when you get into an assessment or whatever type of situation, or you're pulled over, your mind is so swift, so clean, so strong that the conversation you have, the person at the next end will be like, oops, sorry, I think I probably might have, mistaken it. I understand. You know what you're doing. Because sometimes we put ourselves in trouble because we're not ready for any moment that's going to come. Because we're always putting ourselves into some sort of being subjectiveness. So that's basically what I was saying. Where let's really know who we are to the root, and it goes straight to where we're going, and it gives us focus.
So I have to ask both of you. So were you actually doing self-awareness for yourself? Or were you doing self-awareness for others? Or were you doing a blend of both after doing some reflection after that workshop? and I can let you all think about this first. I'm going to tell you, I think I might have been doing a blend of both, if I have to be totally honest and transparent. I do self-reflection and introspection because of things that I've been through in my life. And so it's really important for me to reflect and do introspection and check myself as I'm navigating, as I'm, talking with people. I have people's lives in my hands all the time. I'm not a doctor, but being a coach, whether it's in fitness, whether it's in career, whether it's in life purpose, people are trusting me to help navigate and guide them, right? So I take that really seriously because I need to make sure I'm grounded. I need to make sure I'm right. I need to make sure I'm practicing what I'm preaching, right? I don't want to be one of those people who say something and do something totally opposite. But I also do think there's a piece of me that did self-awareness because of how I needed to navigate as an entrepreneur, as a coworker, as a fellow fitness group coach. And so I had to get real with myself there for a minute. I don't think I realized it, that I was doing some of that until I did that workshop. But I do think there was a piece of me, it's not large, but it irritated me that I even had that little piece of me. Because to me, that's like you're relinquishing some control and power to someone else, because you're not allowing yourself to truly walk in your authenticity. And that bothered me. And so I had to check that on, am I really showing up and doing the self-awareness for myself, or am I doing it for others? So after I left there, I did come to the realization that I had a blend of both. I've since changed that though, but I did have a blend of both. How about you two? Where did you two land?
Paula, I think I had a blend of both too, and I had a meeting with myself after the meeting.
I love it.
Yeah, in my self-reflection, I always think about, am I spending my time in the most productive way, the most beneficial way? And again, we're tired of DEI trainings and workshops. I mean, I won't speak for y'all. I'm tired of DEI trainings and workshops. I am your DEI. I'm diverse. When I walk in, there's your diversity, okay? That's kind of where my mindset was. But I did take a lot of valuable things away from that meeting. But at the end of the day, I had to really think about, was this the best use of my time to put myself in a situation where I would have to scan the room and take the temperature and monitor where or whether or not I felt safe? Is that the best use of my time? And it was not. So now I've made it a practice to really think strategically about what I say yes to and make my yes strategic, because what is the point in putting yourself in harm's way? And by harm's way, that self-awareness that makes you cringe and doubt, that's not self-awareness. That's psychological harm. And so to put oneself in a situation like that, I think that's something that we have to reconsider as people. What's mandatory and what's an elective, and make the best possible decision.
Yeah, I'm inspired there. I should say, initially when I chose it as a value, it was really for myself, right? I wanted to believe that, I'm always self-aware for myself, and that's how I move. But getting to think about it, especially after we, huddled up and had that conversation, I started thinking about maybe there are other external factors here at play, and we have to always be considerate of these factors. Right now, it comes to the point that how do I navigate these external factors? How do I control them so that they, don't take over my life? I don't want to always be self-aware for other people. I want to be zoned in and focused and, objective with every space that I get into, with every environment that I put myself into. So it has to be something that I dictate. So, having thought about that, it started also allowing me to think futuristically, you know, and say, I have to build my own self awareness for my own benefit. That's going to feed into my own, you know, energy, and everything else that goes with it. So it's something that you now have to place yourself in that space to be able to think about. If we hadn't put ourselves in that particular situation and thought about it, maybe wouldn't have talked about it. But guess what? Other people would have talked about it, and I bet you other people did actually talk about it at that workshop. And they also wanted to figure out, but why all those people in one group? You know what I mean? So even if we try to kind of separate ourselves in certain situations, you know, we are probably going to stand out anyway. So why not stand out in a way that benefits us instead of always complaining that, oh, the environment is not favoring us, or the environment is not giving us opportunities, or there's always something to complain about. So if you kind of zone in into your strength and into that self-awareness, and you use it as a leverage, then it should end up allowing us to be the ones who benefit in the room because of that difference. We cannot hide the difference. It is clear. So why not take advantage of it instead of, you know, say, hey, it's kind of putting us in a bad space.
Wow. So that one was deep, because I like that. Actually, the two of you, that was quite a little bit of a contrast, but a unity. I don't know how to explain what that was. It was very interesting, because at the end of the day, I think all three of us will agree we belong in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how people receive us is their problem. That's not our problem.
Mm-hmm.
We know we belong in the room. We're there for a certain reason. We're there to get what we need to get out of it. And if you have a problem with that, that's your problem. There's nothing we can do to control that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But we know strategically why we're there, why we've said yes, why we want to attend, why we want to engage, why we want to participate. And so remembering that as you go into these rooms, even if you have people who don't accept you, even if you have people who look at you a little bit weird, because we do get looks, even though if you get, and you can feel the vibe, you can feel it right when you walk into a room. You don't even have to say nothing. You can feel it. Yeah, you can feel it. You can feel it. You be like, yeah, they really don't want me here. But to get to the point where we're like, we don't care because we know why we're here. We've done our identity analysis and all of that, right?
I have a question for you, Paula, when you say that we know why we're there.
Oh, Lord.
So we know why we're there. We know why we're there, but does it mean that we have to demonstrate to them? Does it mean that we have to prove ourselves to them? Should we show off? Or should we subtly sit in the corner and hope they'll discover us by some grace or some charm somewhere? How do we play it out? Because we have to be intentional on positioning ourselves because we're there.
Well, I think you just answered it, right? At the end of the day, it's the environment and why you're there, which is, to me, goes back to what Abena said about being strategic. So no, there's sometimes they don't need to know I'm in a room. But there are sometimes where you are in a room where you're going to get seen because of maybe the role that you have in that room. But I also don't think that we need to come in and be make a scene or make it known we're also in the room either. But I'm going to tell you what you're not going to do when Paula Bell walks in a room is you're not going to disrespect me when I walk into that room. Period. That's what you're not going to do. You may not like I'm in the room. You may not want me in the room. That is your choice. But we're going to respect each other while we in that room, because the minute that disrespect comes, that turns into a whole nother situation. And I think sometimes we forget that when we are in the room or when other people see us come in the room. It's just a respect and courtesy thing, right? But I don't think we have to be known. I do think sometimes people, especially when it's around DEIB conversations. Now, I'm quite sure you all have experienced this. Oh, so there's the black brown person in the room. Let's ask them. I'm not the only one who has difference. I am not the only one who doesn't have equity. I am not the only one who's not been in inclusive situations. I'm not the only one that hasn't belonged. Just because I'm black or brown does not mean I have the answers to all your questions, right? But we tend to get pinpointed that way. So many rooms I've been in where that has occurred?
You know, I get it. I get it. Going into these rooms, but I'd rather have my own room. I'd
Agreed.
rather I'd rather have my own room and select people to come. Choose
Yes.
experts from within the community. Choose, this is the place at which, if we're talking about really understanding our value and our worth, knowing
Right.
that we have what we need within us. And so I'd rather have my room, my environment in which to create a space for learning for people. And that way, there's that psychological safety will be present. Our well-being is at the forefront. Maintaining our mental health is at the forefront because we would have less navigation of all of these other terms involved. So um, essentially, I think we'll get there. We'll get to the place where we understand that we could create our own spaces for these types of things. But until we do, we've got to navigate and we've got to negotiate.
And I also think we have to be strategic, right? Because when we have created spaces, those spaces some of them have been destroyed, right? If you look at what happened at Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? It was great for Black businesses, but it got destroyed. Let's keep it real. So I do think I agree with you. It's not that we don't have all the talents and skills within us to be able to create our own space in our own room. But I think, Abena, you said a very important word. Both you and Jack said two very important words tonight: strategic and intentional. Those are two very important words as we navigate. Because I do believe sometimes we do get complacent and we think we have to depend on others and not pull what's within us. It's interesting. All of us on this call right now are entrepreneurs. Every last one of us. Abena and I have written books. Well, I've written one. I can't say books. I've written one. Right? Jack, you're producing. Yeah, right. You're producing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing it. We're examples that it can be done. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you it's easy, though. There's still some things that we have to go through, unfortunately. However, I wonder if all of us could get like that, though, and get unified and cohesive and work together.
I think part of it comes from the words that you picked up, being strategic and intentional, but also being able to make sure that we can rise up to the occasion as well. It's not just about being in the room. Anybody can be in a room, but we have to be able to rise up to the occasion, meaning that there are expectations that are going to come. And most of the time, it's sad to say, but they're going to be low expectations. Oh, what are they going to offer us? What are they going to give us? You know what I mean? And if they're going to be comparing with other people, they're going to be comparing so many different factors. So when you rise up to the occasion and your level of excellence, your level of delivery, your level of knowledge is like, okay, they are really here. They will feel you. And when we talk about navigating the space, there's always going to be, there's always going to be challenges in every industry, whether black or white, whatever race. They have created infrastructure for other groups of people, and they've taken away that infrastructure when they see them thriving. If we're going to thrive as people of color in whatever industry we're in, business, whatever, we have to be able to think ahead and navigate even the challenges before they come. So we have to anticipate that, oh, if I, have my building here that might remove it, what am I going to do if they remove it? If I build this sort of a technology, they might not approve it. What am I going to do if they don't approve it? So if we think like that, knowing that they're going to be hurdles, but always going around these hurdles, it means that whenever there's a challenge, you've already seen it, you go around it, you've got a solution, you're thinking ahead. You're not going to wait and cry on, oh my goodness, they took away my opportunity. They never took away your opportunity. There's always going to be challenges, but you always need to know that as Black people, it's our role as the ones that are role models for everybody else who wants to do what we're doing, we have to go up the ladder. We have to make sure that if we promise people that we're going to do this business, we're going to do it right. If we promise people that we're going to deliver this message, we're going to deliver it right. So we have a challenge that we have because of our kids and their grandkids and kids after that. They need to come up and say, Paula was doing it, Abina was doing it, Jack was doing it. What's going to stop me from getting into that room and being assertive with what I'm doing?
Woo, okay, so we're almost about time, but here's the thing. I need you two to come back because we need to have a whole conversation on entrepreneurial shit.
Yep.
Okay, we need to have a whole conversation
do.
about this. Yeah, we need to
Yeah.
have a whole conversation because as far as people of color, I think there's some things that we have to take into consideration for us
Mhm.
to be successful and unified. So I would love to have you all back to
Mhm.
have that conversation as entrepreneurs who've been doing this for a while. But I don't want to get off this pod without the both of you being able to share your social media details so that people can stay connected with you until we do that entrepreneurial podcast, because it will happen this year. So, Abina, you go first. What's the best way for people to stay connected with you?
Yeah, the best way is to reach out to me on any of my social media channels. My business, Sankofa Literary and Empowerment Group, is on Facebook at SLG Book Club. And then LinkedIn is always a great place to connect with me, as well as X. And then my website, www.abinasankofa.com. You can reach me there. And Paula, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to chat with you and Jack today.
Oh, yes, this conversation needs to keep going. And Jack, how can people connect with you? And Jack is gone. And Jack is coming back. And Jack is back. And how can people connect with you, Jack?
Yeah, people can connect with me with multiple ways. You know, I'm on social media, Jack Chimbitete, most of my handles, right? So you can find me on different parts of social media and our platform, Africa Live Network.tv. So you can even find me on Jack at Africa Live Network.tv at any time.
Perfect. And I have to give a shout out to Cultural. Again, this conversation came out because of an event hosted by Culture All. If you have not heard about Culture All and you live in the state of Iowa, you are missing out on opportunities to connect with other cultures in our community because they value the cultures of all of those in our community. Go ahead, check out their website, www.cultural.org. And if you have any questions, you can actually reach out to Jack and I, because we are actually probably Abina too, because we are all connected to Cultural in some way, shape, or form. But you can definitely reach out to us to find out more. But I would advise you, go to their website, jump on that newsletter that they give out, follow them on LinkedIn. They are always putting out great content around the area of culture. Now, Jack and Abina, you stay on with me once we wrap up, but this is a wrap. This has been an amazing episode, one of the best ones I've had so far. Thank you all for engaging and listening. Please keep these conversations going. You can subscribe to our channels, turn on notifications to know when we come back on live, because Abina and Jack will be joining us again live at some point this year to talk about entrepreneurship. Definitely leave comments if you are not watching us live, but you're watching this recording. If you have any comments, and for those who are live, I didn't see any questions come through, so I'm assuming we probably answered everything you needed to answer. But in honor of my boy Solo, who couldn't be here, he always says, for each one, reach one, and teach one. When you know better, you do better. So let's continue to do better. Let's continue to uplift each other, and we will check you out the next time.